the taste of awesome Friday, April 29th. I hope you're super psyched. We're continuing our series on Catholic presuppositionalism. You're not going to want to miss it. Share it with all your friends, all your family, your classmates, and coworkers, because PaleocratDiaries is on the air. Ow! Come on now! Get that coffee. Get it through a straw, stacked. If you don't have a straw, you better let somebody know. Go get me a straw right now! Give me a straw right now, because I gotta get it straight to the dome. This is hyper fuel. This is jet fuel. Hyper-powered sonic stuff. I'm your boy, the OG, the one and only Paleocrat, Jeremiah Bannister. You are tuned in right now to Meaning of Catholic. What an amazing channel. What an amazing day it is to be alive. And because of that, we rejoice. We rejoice and we are glad in it. Because Christ is King. Because he's risen, because he's king, and all power and authority is his. Today, check this out. Today, what? St. Peter? We got St. Catherine of Siena. We got a bunch of amazing saints interceding for us, which makes it all the more urgent that we take a knee for Christ the King, resolving deep inside every thought, word, and deed to the advancement of his kingdom, to never give up, to keep on smiling, and to remember that one day we too shall die. So dream bigger thoughts. Give it everything you got. Find out what you love and do it with a gusto, like I do. I'm doing what I love. I love doing this show. It's awesome, by the way. Not even lying. And today, we're going to be going through, check it out. We got a bunch of cool stuff for you. Irenaeus, an Orthodox apologetic methodology, a neo-patristic presuppositionalism. It's episode 2. If you missed part 1, it's okay. It's okay. It was a lot of definitions, to be quite frank. There's a lot of definitions. We had to go through what's apologetics, what's methodology, what's method. And we went through it. And so, you're okay to be here right now. In fact, there might not be a better place to be. There might not be a better place to be. And at least a couple people have figured it out. Check it out. Watch this. Boom. So these folks, these folks right here, they know. They're like, okay, yeah, I'm definitely here for the Kaiser. Definitely here. Let's go ahead and let's see who's up in this place. Up in here. You got Sam. Look at all his wolves. Those are his friends he's inviting. Those are his friends that he's inviting on all different platforms. I know it's true. Phil Gonzalez, he's got the 3 wolves there. That's our little symbol. We've got I have no idea why there's a cake and a whale. The last episode, I don't even know the context of this. And Veronica, she makes amazing content for the show, these short videos that are just hilarious. And she found this segment of the last show where I'm talking about whales and tribes and mating patterns. Don't even ask. I have no idea. It was an evening show. It was an evening Emperor program. And so that was just part of it. Let's see. Candelario says, we are building our proselytizing toolkit. He's got the mega cool shades. It's totally true, brother. It's totally true. We've got to figure out, how do we get here? Right? What was it that led us here? How do we get out? What's the best way to approach a broken and dying and blasphemous world? What's the best way? There's all different means. There's all different ways to go about that. Some of them have been used for a long time, and they haven't been doing very good. And so that's what we're talking about, okay? That's what we're talking about. Let's see. Phil says, what is a moment between enemies? Yeah, because I said I'd begin in a few moments. It's betwixt. It's the time betwixt. Let's see. Kevin Beck. Good morning, Wolfpack. Take the knee for Christ the King. Howling. Dude, I'm so happy. You got that snare drum too. We're gonna be blasting that real soon. Yeah. Mango Bango says hyped with a fire symbol. Oh, and look at that. You see that one there in the blue? You see the girl there? It says Angela Bannister. That is my mega hot half Korean beauty queen wife. And I love her. Although she did let me down. She did let me down in that Mormon episode, if you remember. She oversees the staff. So she's like the overseer. She's my secretary. Kind of like I'm the mayor from the Powerpuff Girls, And so it's true. And, she oversees the staff. And they messed up on the thumbnail. They misspelled it. It said Mormon, not Mormon. And admittedly, I brought her in here. I took it out on her just brutally, making her give me a kiss on the cheek and everything. But, I should have been, in hindsight, I should have been more generous. I mean, I should actually be excited at the fact that my staff, made up of my son, Little Lou, and Big Wolf, as little as they are, right? As little as they are, barely into speaking, that somehow they only misspelled Mormon by one letter at 4 a.m. I don't know what they're doing. So lots and lots of fun. But make sure to say hi to my wife. She's an amazing, amazing woman. Corey, here for the Kaiser. Corey, I owe you a message, my man. I owe you a message. I know it. We have to connect here after the show sometime. So also, of course, hallelujah. Very grateful, of course, for you. Phil talked about whale apologetics in the wolf pack. I have no idea what that is. Whale apologetics. Well, I guess I do. I'm the guy who started it. I'm the dude who started that. So, okay, make sure you hop in there. It's going to be a bunch of fun. We got to move on, though, because today, believe it or not, today is a busy day for your boy. Not only because, well, I guess this isn't today, but if you're in the Grand Rapids area, there's a couple real quick announcements. Nothing huge. Before we do, let me just say, earlier on when I was talking about the date and what's going on today, SAINTMAKER, okay? SAINTMAKER. It's awesome to be part of this group, by the way. And I want to show you something with this, okay? I just want to show you kind of like what they have at the beginning of each month. Well, I'll show you something that's not been filled out. I don't know if you'll be able to see it very well. If not, it's okay. So this part, we didn't need to fill out. No, hold on. Yeah, no, don't want that. Yeah, Steam is like, would you like to turn Steam on? No, I would not. Yeah, let me force quit Steam. So, my son, it doesn't even use it anymore. I'm like, dude, get it off here. So, but this right here, right, gives you a basic idea for what you're looking at and the goal and plan. And it's awesome. I mean, the way that they've got it laid out, spiritual, family, parents, social, vocation, marriage, physical, hobbies, finances, mindset. You've got a list of motivations, right? Write down what motivates you about the goal. First steps that you got to take when it's due. You've got your strengths, opportunities, weakness, and threats. It's called SWOT. And of course, at the end, your reward. And at the beginning of each month, I'll show you this. This is really cool. So at the beginning of each month, they have this. This is like so helpful. You know, a lot of people who, you know, Catholic people, they're going through and they're trying to figure out what day is it. They're, you know, they can see certain dates are feast days that stand out, but they're like, well, I don't have another calendar, so I don't know, you know, what's maybe other saints or the other form of the Mass or whatever. They don't know. This stuff's right here. And it's not just that, but it tells you not only what day, but what class is the feast, the name of the feast, a quick background to the feast, as well as different things that you can do. Okay? And so, you know, you've got different traditions, customs, things like that. You don't have to do any of it, but it's all there. And it's so helpful because we get so trapped in modern times where everything's been leveled and it's difficult to recognize the transcendent anymore. You know, in fact, we get stuck in watches and things like that where everything, even time itself, has been kind of leveled down and made just purely ordinary, very mechanical. And not something that, you know, that follows like the liturgy where on the one hand, you know, during let's say Christmas, during Christmas, on the one hand, it would be, you know, 2022. On the other hand, we're in one way or another closer to the day of Christmas. That we have that merging of place and time. And what this allows you to do, it says, look, it's easy to get caught up in, what do I got to do this hour, by this hour, by this hour? But then to draw it back in and put it within the context of your life as a Christian, your life as a Roman Catholic. And it's a powerful thing. Learn more about it right here. We'll be back in just a moment. Get your coffee ready, okay? Get your coffee ready. And I want to thank all those who've already gone to the SAINTMAKER. Information's down in the description, even a 10% code. You can check that out. Have the code down there, 10% off. And it really helps. It helps the program, but more than that, it helps you. And I know that because it helps me. Can a personal planner really make you a saint? Not by itself. But in our day and age of addictive apps and glowing screens, we're bombarded by constant distraction, and our quest for sainthood often takes a backseat. The SAINTMAKER is the first high-performance planner for the spiritual life, made by faithful Catholics for faithful Catholics. It's a work of genius, really, fusing the wisdom of the saints with the science of personal productivity. It's rigorous, but sainthood is tough, and most of us need help organizing our time, our work, our leisure, and our devotion, because that can help you become a saint. The SAINTMAKER is elegant, fits in your purse or briefcase, and is a perfect companion for your missal, Bible, or rosary. Published 4 times per year, each season includes daily planning pages, feast days and devotions for both forms of the liturgical calendar, goal-setting pages, confession journals, and more. It's why the SAINTMAKER is used by hardworking Catholics like CEO of Sock Religious Scott Williams, best-selling author Sam Guzman, YouTubers like Amber Schneider, a Catholic wife Dina Barca and Brian Holdsworth, and priests like Father Corey Stitcha. Try the SAINTMAKER out, and if you decide that it's not for you, you can send it back for a full refund within 90 days. So go right now. Find your life planner at thesaintmaker.com. Quantities are limited though, so head on over to thesaintmaker.com to order yours and to start your SAINTMAKER journey today. You got to do it right there. Shop now at thesaintmaker.com/PaleocratDiaries. Let's see here. What's this? What's this? That is the sound of awesome. That is the sound of the putting ourselves, right? Hurling ourselves into the octagon of history, right? That rough and tumble of time and space where people debate things out, debate things particularly about God. How did we get here? What are we? Do we have a purpose? Is there a meaning? Is there truth? What is it? Is there right and wrong? How do we know? These kind of questions, they consume us. They consume us. But we're creatures created in the image of God, and we've got this wicked bad habit of suppressing the truth in exchange for a lie. So we're going to be talking about it. And in doing so, we put the alert system out. So that way all of the mods and all of the admins are releasing right now the sounds of joy. The sounds of joy and triumph that say, PaleocratDiaries is on, son. It is on. Carrier pigeons taking messages all the way to the north, the south, the east, and the west, as all the Paleocrats around the world are letting their neighbors know that PaleocratDiaries is on. And how do they do it? In the best way possible. They do it with banjos. They do it with xylophones. Cling, 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 cling. They got bells. They got kazoos and didgeridoos, snare drums, guitars, all sorts of instruments. Sometimes they're just acting like a wild man at their cubicle. And the people are like, what is that person's problem? And he's like, I don't have a problem. I'm loving life. I'm loving life. I'm loving the Lord. I'm giving him everything I've got because I resolve deep down inside to never give up, to keep on smiling, and to remember, memento mori, we're going to die. So what an amazing thing it is, in fact, to be alive and to have the opportunity to be enslaved to Christ the King. Don't you love it? Don't you love your faith? Put yourself out there. Let people know there is no more holding back. There's no more putting that candle under a bushel. No more. And if it is, breathe into that. Get that thing going until the bushel just ends up burning down. And all that's left is an amazing candle, in fact, and a bunch of awesome light that you have helped to provide to the world. That's what we got to do. And the way that we're going to do it is by talking about this particular book, A Neo-Patristic Presuppositionalism. It's episode 2 of my series on Catholic presuppositionalism. It's groundbreaking. Yeah, it totally is. And I'm doing it. Yeah, I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad you're here. Again, I was gonna give an announcement before I did the SAINTMAKER, but I'm supposed to do that early. It's better to do it early on in the episode. I should do it even sooner. But I get caught up. Talking. But I wanted to say just 2 more things. If people are in Grand Rapids, in or around Grand Rapids, or they would like to drive, you've got 5 hours right now. If you'd like to drive 5 hours to hear your boy here talk about secular age through the lens of How Not to Be Secular by Professor James K.A. Smith, if you would like to hear me talk about that to a group of dudes called the Inquisitors, you got to send me an email. That's at PaleocratDiaries@gmail.com. I'll be talking there this evening. It's the second time. The first time was about the book Enthusiasm, and I think those two go hand in hand. I think that it was providential, in fact, that we began with enthusiasm and then went to secular age and stuff like that, as well as to the Lasant series. We have a whole bunch of great videos. If you'd like to know more about that and about the book, the series is in a playlist, a master playlist. It's the master key. It's the master key to all of the epic adventures of PaleocratDiaries. You got to make sure, go down in the description below. There's a whole bunch of stuff there. Also, remember, right after the show is the Afterglow Q&A Super Show Extravaganza. And that is going to be on Telegram. It's live. It's like a Skype call. You do not have to participate. You can just lurk. Lurkers are welcome. Lurkers are welcome. So you're allowed to just be in there and just enjoy the conversation. It's always a good time. We'll make sure to record this one. We did not record the Q&A after the last episode. It was late at night, and we just kind of let it go. Also, real quick, if you're in the area also, there is our school is doing a production of Newsies. And it's an awesome, awesome production. My wife went. I've gone to a bunch of them so far. My Fair Lady blew my mind. Sacred Heart Academy blows my mind. Okay? It's an amazing, amazing school. And I've shown ads before, a promo of the school. It's why I do the show, to send our kids to that school. That's why I do it, right? And so it's just, it was what compelled me in the beginning. Now I've got a lot of reasons, right? And so, but the thing is, in the beginning, what compelled me was this desire to say, look, we're making a sacrifice to send our kids there. And this is one of the many, 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 many reasons that we're truly grateful, thankful, and blessed to have our kids attending a school like Sacred Heart Academy. And so it's just amazing. And you know what? I wouldn't normally do this, but I want to go ahead and do it anyway. I want to show you the school real quick, just again, just so that, and it's not a long promo, but it's a good one, and it's a little bit older. So like the school at this point has actually grown 2 times its size. It's gigantic. It's amazing. It's, I believe, the fastest growing school for the size, fastest growing school in the Catholic in the diocese here of Grand Rapids, and so. It's just amazing. But I want to show you that, and when we get back, we're going straight into the book. Okay? No alert system, no nothing. I didn't plan on showing this preview, but I want you to see not only who does this sort of thing. And again, if you want more information about this, and you'd like to go, if you're around the area, you'd like to go, and you'd like to get tickets, make sure just again email me PaleocratDiaries@gmail.com. And if you'd like to learn more about Sacred Heart Academy, and even if you're outside the area and you say, man, this is an amazing school, contact me, hit me up. I got some connections. I can connect you with these folks, and just watch this and think and pray.
You see me in my uniform, and you think I'm going to school.
You think I'm studying, doing my homework, practicing my Latin. You're not completely wrong. The truth is this: what looks like an academy is in fact where I am learning to dig deep.
To search with an attentive heart what all men seek, but few can name.
Wisdom, knowledge, it's the fountain of life and holiness. A sacred temple, the very house of God and gate of heaven.
What I seek, what I have learned to desire, is the desire of the everlasting hills. I am looking to lose myself in the Sacred Heart of Jesus.
It may look like I'm going to school, but in truth, I am learning to chase after my Savior, the King and center of all hearts.
And I will not rest
until I take hold of him,
who has already
I love God.
taken hold of me.
I love you, Jesus. Look at what God does. Look at the future, by the way. Look at it. Look at the saints that are about to be made. The leaders of this world, young men and young women. Behold. Envision for yourself, is this something in your community? Is this something in your church? If it's not, there was a time that it wasn't for us either. There was a time that it wasn't, and it took homeschool families to come together. And that's what they've created. That's what they've created. And I bring that up in context of this conversation we're having here. Because, we're looking at a world that's really doing a very, very poor job. Right? There's a lot of wicked, bad things going on in the world right now. and got a bunch of light coming through. And so, terrible things in the world. Look at the way that the world is falling apart. Look at the way that people have lost their idea of their grounding in this world. Who are they? What are they? Why do they act the way that they do? The world is looking around all over for answers. And all of them are these autonomous ideas that they're trying to look at the world apart from the God who created the world. They're trying to understand things apart from God's understanding of those things as creator, as the pre-interpreter of all things. They're bound to fail. They are bound to fail. And insofar as they're right, they're only right insofar as the Catholic worldview fully understands those things, insofar as it understands them as God has revealed them. Because you can't disconnect these things. You can on the creator-creature distinction. You can say, yes, it's not pantheistic, right? I don't look out at a frog or, a whale and say, behold God, right? At the same time, that's his created order. It proclaims his glory. It proclaims, right? It tells the story. It proclaims his power, his divinity, his attributes in a way that is clearly evident. And yet, people don't believe. And the question is, why? And remarkably, a lot of Catholics don't like to speak of that question and to respond in a manner that echoes St. Paul. And that's what we're delving deep into. What does he say? They suppress the truth for a lie. What does that say? That at least to some degree, there is truth, right? That they know that it's within and without them. And that they are not just simply ignorant. It's not that they haven't read a book. It's not that they haven't talked to people. There is a certain kind of truth that is immediately, in fact, available to them. It's impressed upon their hearts. They have a conscience. And for these things, these truths, these things, and the nature of error and the nature of self-deception, where it's self-concealing, self-obscuring, that the nature of that must have an impact. It does inevitably anyway have an impact on our apologetic, but not thoughtfully. It's been one of those things that I think people have kind of shelved a little bit. They just, when they approach apologetics, it's completely like, well, they just simply don't know. If they have the right information, we download the right information, then the software will work right. You hear this, as I said in the last episode, you hear this sometimes in the conversations about why there's certain things going on in the church, and the answer is just strictly that they're not catechized. As if people only sinned because they weren't catechized. I grant that it's giving people the benefit of the doubt, and you want to do that. But as I've said before, if you're apologetic and your theology does not have something within it that gives a context to self-deception, right? To self-concealing, to self-obscuring. If it lacks that, it's insufficient to that extent. So we went through and we talked about the first episode of this was talking about what is the definition of apologetics, what is methodology. If you missed that, make sure to go back. Okay? But we're going to talk now about the start of Book 1. Start of Book 1, we're talking about adversus heresies, or the exposure and refutation of knowledge falsely so called. I want you to just think about that. The exposure of knowledge falsely so called. Because we're going to dive into what that means. Why is it significant? How would that change the way that we approach apologetics? Book 1, right here. In Book 1, St. Irenaeus gives a succinct description of his motive. Quote, "Inasmuch as certain men have set the truth aside, and bring in lying words and vain genealogies, and by means of their craftily constructed plausibilities, they draw away the minds of the inexperienced and take them captive. I felt constrained, my dear friend, to compose the following treatise in order to expose and counteract their machinations." So right from the beginning, he's addressing the idea of the counter-apologist, right? What we would call this in the situation. You have a heresiarch. You have somebody going and advocating a position that has deviated itself from the Catholic faith, and that insists, that dares to exalt itself as being true. as being the real true faith, the real one, you know? And so he has to deal with this. But he doesn't just describe it as, well, they're just ignorant. They don't know. He describes it in a way that a lot of people would say, well, that doesn't seem very generous. Lying words, craftily constructed plausibilities. That, to me, stood out maybe more than anything for the applicability of this idea to our modern predicament. Is so much of the apologetic conversation that goes on, all of these different encounters and dialogues that people have. Go back and listen and find out, how often do you hear phrases like plausibility, reasonability, that's all it is, that it's just left, well, it's at least reasonable, or it's at least plausible. Right? We can grant it that much. And that's that, to get that wiggle room in. We heard this, for example, in the debate, and curiously enough, people on our side of a debate with Trent Horn when he was debating the guy about Marian dogmas. When he was debating it, he was just trying to advocate for literally the bare minimum, the scraps from the table. It was the idea that at least it's not against Scripture, at least it's reasonable, at least we've got some kind of a reason in our interpretive system for that. That has no legs, by the way. I mean, to be brutally honest about that. In fact, every heretic in the universe that's a quote unquote, you know, the Christian cults and stuff, they'll say, well, yeah, well, it doesn't contradict Scripture. Which one would say it does? And if we say, well, it contradicts it according to whom? That's the real question. It contradicts it according to what system? But to say it's at least, you know, it's a plausible explanation for this. And you say, what was the goal? So that it would get in, and the express aim of the debate was to just get into that fuzzy space where you would be able it'd be in the negotiables, right? It'd be in the non-fundamentals, where you're at liberty to disagree in that very arbitrary place in the Protestant mindset, in the Protestant system, that says you can't negotiate on certain things, but on these ones you can. And it's in fact quite vast. It's in fact quite vast. With very few solid, like, this is what it is. And even then, it's begging the question. But they didn't go there. But the idea is this craftily constructed plausibility. This is even more important in a day and age of a secular age. In the days of a secular age, the idea is an idea plausible? Can we at least imagine? Is the social imaginary such that we can recognize this and believe it at bare minimum to be an option? One option amongst many. And so you have many different beliefs, you have many different views, and some are more plausible than others. But the idea is that the Overton window of plausibility has grown expansively, tremendously. And St. Irenaeus, in dealing with those he was dealing with, was aiming at exposing these machinations. Right? He says that they're subtle in their lies. Right? He notes that they are subtle in their lies, crafty in their machinations, and that they who set the truth aside, quote, draw away the mind of the simpler and less experienced among the faithful. These deceptions actually take people captive. And so he's compelled to do apologetics in order to stop this from happening. To that extent, apologetics is protective. So we talked about it before. You have offense, defense, proof. You have first in that order is for the church. That the faithful is the primary aim, right, of the benefit of apologetics, the first and foremost. It's a defense of the faith. It's also an offense. It also makes strides in the direction trying to reach the goal. It also provides various proofs. And that this is done, quote, for, quote, they also overthrow the faith of many by drawing them away under the pretense of superior knowledge. When you watch debates against Christians and Catholics and everything else in this unbelieving world that we're living in right now, how often do you get that impression from the scientific crowd that it's superior knowledge? It's not just, and that sometimes we take it as a slight against us. But again, we're thinking of it wrong. We're wrongly imagining what this is. It's not just that it's this pompous pretense of superior knowledge. Rather, against us, but against God himself. Quote, concerning the nature of error, Irenaeus continues, error indeed is never set forth in naked deformity, lest, being thus exposed, it should at once be detected. Okay, so it's never going to just come out and say it. Just like I said earlier about who's going to say, yeah, my views contradict Scripture. Yeah, my views are very contradictory to Scripture. Who's going to say they're in a cult? Very few people will say, yes, I believe God is there, but I don't want anything to do with him. They'd rather just say, no, I don't believe God is there. Even if there's something still inside them, nagging at them, pulling at them, that they have to constantly suppress down like pushing a volleyball under the water. But it's craftily decked out in an attractive dress, so as, by its outward form, to make it appear to the inexperienced, ridiculous as the expression may seem, more true than the truth itself. More true than the truth itself. And what's the point of saying that? Because Christ is, in fact, the truth. And we are on that side. He's the truth himself. Even if that conclusion was at the end of a series of arguments, it would have been true throughout the entire series of arguments. Throughout the entire series of considerations. It's like, well, is this in fact the case? Is Christ in fact the truth? If we conclude that he is, then he was the entire time, even while we were wondering as much. Thank God it's been revealed and we don't got to worry about that. I'm not even joking. Thank God that he revealed it to us. Why do you think he did that? So that we can then say, oh, he revealed it to us. Now let's go play Monocle Man. Let's go strap on the old monocle here. I got it this time. Put on the monocle, look into the ancient scrolls and come to read between the lines and put it all together and say, yep, okay, it's got my stamp of approval. Boink. What the heck? You subject yourself to this because it's true. And we profess as much. We express and confess as much when we do the creed. Irenaeus is motivated by a certain view of the nature of error. In his view, it's inherently self-obscuring, self-concealing, and, quote, never set forth in its naked deformity. If it even has a certain intrinsic dynamic to remain hidden, quote, lest being exposed, it should at once be detected, end quote. So it's not just that it's there. It's not just that it's underlying, right? Something that's like they're oblivious to, but there is at least some kind of dynamic within the unbeliever that is actively participating in that. Self-deception. Because if it was exposed, it would be detected. And why would that matter? Because they'd have to change their lives. They would have to give thanks and glory to God. They would have to recognize his power, his divinity, and his attributes. But they prefer serving the creature. They prefer worshiping the created order over against the one who created that order. To do as they please, autonomous minds, autonomous hearts. Thus, it requires an intellectual effort to address or to continue, Irenaeus' metaphor, to undress error. That's one of those things, and he mentions this later, so I won't go into detail about it now. But I think there's, just like politics, everybody's kind of their own armchair politician, right? They watch the news, then they pontificate about it, and they've got a real solid opinion. They go on Facebook and they let everybody know. It's like all those boomers that make videos that are talking about their inside sources. It's like, Granny May or something. I don't even know who it is. Elmer and Edith and Star send him messages. I mean, give me a break, Harriet, Susan. Come on now. Oh yeah, I got the message from John earlier. He sent me a message from somebody from Harry. Okay. And then they talk, in their cars with their cameras about, right now, this is powerful. This is really deep stuff. And they end up looking dumb. And they make other people look dumb. That's an extreme version of, I think, what happens in general in a day and age of like our own. The acronym for weird that Jonathan Haidt uses, right? Western, educated, industrial. I think it's industrial, rich, democratic. Okay, we have these things in our society that make us the way we are, and so because of that, it's easy to imagine in that world, in that weird world, that people would feel compelled to know as much as they can about such things, politics especially, but also theology, also apologetics, and not just to know about it, but to go out and forcefully pontificate, even if they haven't put in the time and the effort. There's a sense that that's not democratic. And in that, to a certain extent, that's true. I've mentioned before, the guy is a guy on Twitter who did it debating with the dude from the BBC about whether there was slavery or not in the Bible. That was a public display that was terribly unfortunate. He was unaware that it was, in fact, in the Bible. He was unaware of how the church and, the nation of Israel, how they viewed slavery, and yet engaged full-throatedly in a debate. You don't know what you're talking about. I'm Catholic. I totally know what we believe. And then once he realized it was earth-shattering. And that's on him. No, I'm not joking. It's on him. And I don't want to throw him under the bus. He's a pleasant enough guy. Reached out to me asking, how can I respond to this guy to tell him, well, here's the verses he's talking about. As Bear notes in his book about Irenaeus, refutation by exposure. That's what this is. So the refutation is not just a positive laying forth of beliefs and saying, well, look at the plausibility of this. Look at the reasonability of this. Feel the force of the argument. And if you tie them all together, it's compelling. Refutation by exposure. To expose the error is therefore to dispose the error, thus beginning the process of eradication by revealing that which would remain concealed. Motivation unto apologetics is thus given shape by the nature of error, and as such, the protective motive for apologetics in turn motivates, if not militates, the methodology of revealing purported error. So if we understand the nature of the error of the person we're trying to talk to, that is going to advance the idea of what's the methodology. How ought we to approach this? What is the proper ordering of things? And is it just simply a positive case? Am I just trying to convince you that it's at least reasonable? Or am I going in there to reveal something that's hidden, to expose the nakedness of the system that dares to challenge truth itself? Skill and even dispassion is involved in detection. For one must be both knowledgeable enough to detect it and dispassionate enough not to be lured by its attractiveness. Yeah. And Irenaeus goes on, he describes them in an interesting way. And we can apply this without question to counter-apologists, people who put themselves on the line, right? Who do very public acts of opposition to the faith. It's what they do. It's their life. And the idea is that, he says, they outwardly are covered with sheep's clothing. Their language resembles ours. And I would say, in this case, it would be, just take the atheist as an example, the secular person, using the ideas of right and wrong, using the ideas of truth, right? The reliability of senses, the reasonability, right, of inductive reasoning. They were able to use inductive reasoning to expect that the future will be like the past. That there's a such thing as good or evil, and that we can know it, and that it doesn't just apply to us, but applies to the entirety. In fact, there are ideas about social justice. If you follow Secular Age and how the book by Charles Taylor, and you see the development of that, rather than the subtraction story that the secular theory, right, the secularism hypothesis that over time we learned we didn't need God, and now it just filled the gaps. If you take it the other way, and you say so many of the advances that resulted in the broadening of the idea that things are at least, imaginable, you can at least imagine it as an option, different beliefs, that this was oftentimes driven by pious deeds. pious people doing pious things for pious reasons. It's the nature of reform, by the way, and counter-reform. While their sentiments are very different, he said he deemed it his duty after reading some of the commentaries, as they call them, right? And after making myself acquainted with their tenets through personal intercourse with some of them, to unfold to you, my friend, these portentous and profound mysteries, which do not fall within the range of every intellect, because all have not sufficiently purged their brains. So there's a subtlety, in fact, of error. It's something that you have to actually read about. You should familiarize yourself with individuals, especially if you're putting yourself in this place where you're going to begin speaking this way. It doesn't require that of everybody. And in some ways, some of the things being said on the show are really intended for people who do apologetics at a more formal level. That's why this series is doing what it's doing. That's part of the aim for the first time, everybody. For the first time, I'm hoping and even anticipating that there will be people in the chat and people inside watching the videos and everything else and sharing them and pondering these things, that those individuals come from a position that is antagonistic toward the presuppositional method, but that they do their work in apologetics on a regular basis. We'd have to come up with a name for them, because that's not Johnny Sue and that's not Johnny Q and Sally Sue, and it's definitely not Johnny Sue. It's definitely not that person. Who's that? But the subtlety of error motivates him, for error can masquerade as truth. It can be, quote, outwardly covered with sheep's clothing. Thus he seeks to distinguish between familial language and foreign sentiments, to unmask or unfold that which is hidden. It's prescient, by the way. It's prescient. To see how this operates, not only in heresies, but in views that find themselves, that have a root, right? That they're trying to hearken back to some kind of a source that relates to us. That they'll use that language. We talked about it in the Kingdom of the Cults. And we're continuing that series. We'll be doing other episodes next week. It kind of interspersed throughout the series that we're doing here. But the notion of exposing that which is hidden, unfolding that which is enfolded, and plausible language then. So yes, so these things are hidden. These things are enfolded in plausible language, and he wants to unfold them. He wants to expose them that are hidden. It points to a case for a system methodology, which is to say that a particular form of critical analysis and argumentation, which does not operate merely at the level of claim and counterclaim, but instead aims at the presuppositions and structures of entire systems. For as Irenaeus indicates, the claim may outwardly appear as sheep. So you have to go beneath it. If the claim itself appears and gives the sound and it looks, right, like sheep, but it's not, it's a wolf. If that is the case, you need to go deep beneath it. You need to go into that realm of things that underlie it, precede it. And it's there that the battle actually happens. And those things aren't standalones. That's where systems really begin to emerge. That's where world and life views begin to emerge. How ideas about being, knowledge, purpose, right? You got your metaphysics, you've got your ontology, epistemology, ethics, teleology. That's where those ideas come merging together to create an idea about the world. And that's where we have to find ourselves. Because that's sinking sand. And they're hiding that fact. They're hiding it. And we have to reveal it. We have to expose it. The express purpose of unmasking the entire enemy system, the phony discourse, which seeks to insinuate itself among the faithful and thereby deceive and misguide them. That's the idea. Thus, Irenaeus' apologetics is motivated by an appreciation of the principal truth claims implicit in the whole system of thought, and which lay, in a manner of speaking, behind any rhetorical appearance, what Irenaeus above called error's outward form, which spaciously approximates the canon of truth and as such needs to be exposed. Yes. So they lie enfolded. They're shrouded. They're swaddled in this phony language that they can say, no, we believe like that. We deal with this all the time when talking to Mormons. Oh, yeah, man. Yeah, I totally believe in the Trinity, bro. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I totally believe in the Bible. And they'll say stuff like that. And yeah, oh, I believe in Jesus. Yeah, I totally believe in God, just like you. I believe in the resurrection and the judgment. Yeah, man, we're on the same page. No, we're not. Because underlying that are assumptions, in fact, about the world, about who we are as beings, about what is right and wrong, about what is good and evil, what is the purpose and end and aim of our lives. And it's at that place that we get into the debate. Otherwise, we're just simply saying, well, this verse disagrees with that one, and that's why you can't have that in there. And that's what Protestants say about the Deuterocanonicals, by the way. It's a little bit of a joke. And by the way, if you want to mention me, if you have a question for me, I can go through and look at it. I'll show you really quickly just so that I don't want to lose too much time. The idea being that on this screen, as you can see, there's no yellow thing, so I'd have to go through and look at every single one of these to find out if there was something written to me. Whereas up here, you see this yellow box right here? If you put at meaning of Catholic, that will let me know. And that way I can just see it really quickly. It makes it a lot easier than trying to go through. Sometimes I miss stuff and it bums me out. I don't see it till later. So do your boy a favor, okay? Do your boy a favor. And yeah, Luke has asked, would Aquinas disagree with presuppositionalism? It's a good possibility. It's a possibility. There are certain assumptions that he has. Like, for example, blank slate, right? The idea of how we learn things, and it's through experiences and senses and stuff like that. Those would be things that may militate, although he benefited immensely from living in a world where that was, in fact, kind of taken for granted. So there would be things that a presuppositionalist would say you can use those same arguments, but they must be couched within a worldview that makes sense. And in fact, that's already true. A lot of Thomists are seeing this, that even their ideas about natural law or natural theology, any of these ideas, that unless they're couched within a worldview wherein that makes sense, you have rival systems of how we even interpret what we present as evidence. So we need to get down to, is that how we interpret evidence? And how would we know? And how can we say what we know beyond just ourselves, that it would be uniform? So there'd be numerous things. That's what this discussion's about, is to say, to the extent that there's disagreement, and I believe there is to an extent on various things, that conversation within the Catholic universe has been terribly lopsided. You can find videos about presuppositionalism, but not from somebody like me. Not doing what I'm doing here. In the Catholic world? Come on now. As I said, this is groundbreaking what we're doing. And if you don't think that's true, help me out and introduce me to others. I'd really like to see their videos that could help. And I'd like to help them. We're better in numbers, right? We're doing good. And we'll talk in a future episode, by the way, about criticisms, even from the great Ronald Knox. The great Ronald Knox, at the end of his life, writing 4 chapters of a book called Proving God, that while not embracing it outright, I believe was in the right direction, was going in that direction. But his criticisms of apologetics as it had been developed over time, he was grappling with this question. And I believe that what I'm saying here is in line with that grappling. It's to say, we're trying to grapple at a methodology. We're trying to understand our world, to understand what are arguments? How do these arguments work? What happens if the Catholic the network of presuppositions that we have as Catholics, what if that itself is under attack? And from what presuppositional paradigm is it being attacked from? And how do we address that? And does that come first? They're just a handful of many otherwise excellent questions, if I can say so. If I can say so myself. Right here. So he goes further in this right here, okay? Is that it motivates unto a presuppositional or system methodology. Go behind the error's outward form to reveal and unfold the predisposition or presupposition, which is enfolded in the error's whole system of discourse. Here's another part of Irenaeus' motive. Quote, I do this in order that you, obtaining an acquaintance with those things, may in turn explain them to all those of whom you're connected, and exhort them to avoid such an abyss of madness and blasphemy against Christ. End quote. So he's doing this so that they can be informed about this, and in turn that they can go and they can explain, that they can avoid this abyss of madness, this abyss of blasphemy, daring to exalt itself, this knowledge and wisdom falsely so called, to exalt itself. It's folly, but to exalt itself, double folly, triple folly poop sandwich against our Lord. In other words, in addition to his protective spirit, Irenaeus is further showing that his apologetics is motivated by an intention so that the reader, quote, may in turn explain that which is unfolding. And thus it is not restricted to a few individuals. So he's trying to make it applicable. It's the apologetics of everyday life. The apologetics of the Johnny Sue, that's the second time. The Johnny Sue. It's not the apologetics of the Johnny Sue. It's not, I promise. Oh, dude. Meme lords are going to be all like, they're like, oh, dude, yeah, Johnny Sue. The apologetics of Johnny Sue. You're going to, there's like a listener who's like, I'm Johnny Sue. I was, my great grandfather, I'm from like French or something. I don't know. They're like, they've got weird things sometimes, they got names that sound like chick names, to be brutally honest. This is a manly apologetic. Yeah. He wants his reader to expand on those ideas, of which he sends, quote, only the seminal principles, and with comprehensive understanding to develop these points to their full extent. So he's saying, these are the basics. These are those things at the core principles, just like what I said regarding St. Francis de Sales. He uses this method when engaging with the people of the Chablais. Okay, so he's out there. He's engaging with Calvinists, and he says, look, you could go forever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever on the merry-go-round of madness if you just engage on each and every individual's individual point. You say, oh, wow, okay, I'm encountering this guy. You've got a whole bunch of random arguments all over the place, and I've got to try to address each and every one. What St. Francis did was to take what he believed to be the core and operative ones, find the underlying principle, drive it back down to our core contention. By what authority? So whether it was where do you get your holy orders, whether it was the idea of where do you get the canon from, where is excommunication gone, how can you establish ideas regarding dogmas, distinguish between essentials and non-essentials. Where does your church itself get any authority? How do you prevent yourself from falling into a hermeneutic of solipsism? How do you get yourself out of a theology, an ethic of relativism? And how do you escape the inevitable consequence of ecclesiological anarchism? How do you get out of that? How do you escape that if you suppose those things that you suppose? And in tearing it down, expose this underlying assumption, this network of assumptions that they have, and revealed them for the solipsistic, relativistic, and anarchistic things that they truly are. Wicked forces. Now, let's see here. Apologetics in Irenaeus' thought thus also has an especially intra-ecclesial focus, which also implies that it is aimed primarily at informing insiders rather than persuading either opponents or outsiders. That would be just a matter of sequence. You say, yeah, you're trying to train people. I mean, look, there will be more Catholics tuned into this show on Meaning of Catholic than unbelievers. And so what am I trying to do? If my goal right now was, first and foremost, we need to convert people. I need to make an argument responding to somebody. Instead, to say, how do we equip the brethren? How do we equip the brothers and sisters to do their best in his or her life, whatever that may be, whatever they may be doing? How do we make sure that they're equipped to move forward and to understand the very crafty machinations that are involved in the unbelievers' counter-apologetic, in their worldview? The intended audience, of course, again, is a discourse to the church. Quote, with brevity and clearness, to set forth the opinions, okay, of the heretics in their school, to furnish the means of overthrowing them by showing how absurd and inconsistent with the truth are their statements, end quote. Thus, Irenaeus' apologetic method is one of setting forth the false rule or pattern, the regulum, of doctrine and showing how it is inconsistent with the truth. It is a getting inside the heretical school's thought system and deconstructing the ground on which it stands by unmasking and setting forth its absurdity and its inconsistency. To make known, quote, those doctrines which have been kept in concealment, end quote. So the idea being that he wants to get into their system. He wants to get in and rip out the DNA. He wants to show that their foundation is that of sinking sand. If we believe that we're the pillar and foundation of the truth, if that is in fact the case, and we believe that, then again, insofar as people deviate from that, they have sinking sand. They may have a little block of foundation over here and another block over there, but they don't have the cornerstone. They don't have the cornerstone. They don't have the framework, right, whereon or wherein they can make sense of these things if they lack that, because it's key. He brings up something here about madness, because in the title, I think this is important, because in the title, I use the abyss of madness and blasphemy. The relationship between heresy and madness. If one conceptualizes sanity as the mode of life and reasoning founded on truth, believing, quote, what really is as it is, to use Irenaeus' quote, and madness as the mode of life and reasoning founded on folly, as becoming, quote, broken and spoiled, not being whole, when falseness enters the soul, end quote, then the statement can be read as simply descriptive of that consequence which flows from a series of erroneous ethical and metaphysical commitments. The antithesis to this, according to Irenaeus, is that a person will be, quote, preserved in beauty in due measure when truth is continually in the soul and holiness in the body. That's the idea in 1 Peter 3. Right? We have to enthrone Christ in our heart. We have to have humility. We enthrone him. We're subjected to him, thought, word, deed. We recognize that all power and authority is his. We recognize that the fear of God is the beginning of knowledge, wisdom, understanding. And we recognize that knowledge and wisdom are found in Christ. We recognize that. We recognize that the pillar and foundation of truth is in his church. We recognize that. So to the extent that we are within that framework, and to the extent that that has impacted our lives and our views and our actions, our thoughts, word, and deeds, we're sane. To the extent that an individual or a civilization deviates from that, it enters into clown world. You can't live in something for very long. You'll be living on fumes. You know, if you deviate from the church and you deviate from it, but yet you're still benefiting from the hand-me-downs of a culture that still believes in uniformity of nature, that still believes in objective and normative ethics, that still believes in the trustworthiness of our senses, the reliability of our senses, that still believes that we have free will, that we are thinking our own thoughts. If you get away from that, and if you get away from the idea that there's anything known as sin, inevitably, you end up doing the very thing that Paul talks about in Romans 1. Exchanging the truth for a lie. What happens? Cuckoo town. Cuckoo bird nonsense. Yeah, a bunch of poo-poo trash. The world becomes quackadoodle U, quackadoodle university. The whole world. And we're actually witnessing something like that now. So much of the world has fallen prey to this. So much of the world has fallen prey to that. Has God really said that? I have no need for that hypothesis. Yeah, let's see your work. Let's see your work. And how do you even explain numbers if you don't have need for the God hypothesis? How do you even go about dealing with the argument for God's existence from numbers? Yeah, it's just another one of those immaterial things in a material world. It's just another one. And eventually it's going to die out. It's kind of like, how long is it going to be that Christmas remains anything even remotely close? Because it's already not close, but even remotely close to what we understood as Christmas, insofar as a society and a civilization begin to no longer recognize, and not just not recognize, but even loathe that baby in the manger. It shall not be the same thing. You can call it what you want, but it's been gutted, and it's been replaced by a beast system. Except for how it reigns in the hearts of those who've enthroned Christ in their heart and in their mind. And those people, to that extent, would be sane. He spared no pains. Quote, he says of himself, spared no pains, not only to make those doctrines known, but also to furnish the means for showing their falsity, that men may no longer be drawn away by the plausible system of these heretics. End quote. There's a two-pronged approach here. Okay? And it's that of critical examination cum exposure, together with overthrowal of the plausible system in order to protect the faithful. So you're critically examining their system. You're exposing the system in doing so and critically examining it. And in doing that, you are overthrowing the plausibility of their system. So it's not just, well, yeah, over here is an option, and I want to give you just what I think is a better one. That is the apologetic of the preferred path. That's not what this is. Jesus isn't sitting there saying, I'm just a better way. That's not how we approach heretics. It's not how we approach the world. It's just a better one. It's like saying, it's better to not eat McDonald's if you're trying to lose weight, but you could technically. I mean, you could stay. There was a gym teacher or something that ate McDonald's and did the super size me thing, but he stayed within a certain caloric intake and he made sure to walk. I think it was just walking every day. It wasn't very much. And ended up losing weight. He said, look, you can do that. You don't have to just do super size me and do what happened with this cat. So you can make an argument. Heck, you could just eat a bunch of steak and burgers and lose weight. You could. My dad went on a hot dog diet. Back when he was in high school, he was a wrestler. He went on the hot dog diet and lost a whole bunch of weight. He didn't understand that's actually just keto. He didn't know that back then. He's like, man, it was crazy. But it's not just simply saying that it's better to eat the healthier food, and here's why it's actually better for you, so on, so on, so on. And if you bring up consequence, you say, well, what's the consequence? You're like, well, this is actually where it gets pretty big. It actually would be a consequence, for eternity and stuff. Well, that's not just better, dude. That's like that's an understatement at that point. The better one? You have a better explanation of things? Is it the true one? Or do you just not know? When people say better, it's a better explanation of that. You can at least ask them and say, is it the true one? Or are you kind of like with your eyes closed, like looking at the shadows and stuff, imagining them? I think this is right. How are you approaching this? Do you believe it? And if you do, why, when we do apologetics, do we kind of tamper it down? Like maybe we got to start from that ground zero place where we're not sure and we're just going to follow the evidence ourselves. You believe it already. And you believe it's true, which means it was been true before you were even born. True before any human being even came. Before Adam and Eve were ever created before the universe was created. And I only say not before God because, well, you know, the obvious. There's nothing, in fact, before God. You have a bad understanding of cause and effect if you make that argument. He says, so that the two-pronged approach, critical examination with an overthrow of the plausible system in order to protect the faithful. Quote, that will not expect from me any display of rhetoric or any excellence of composition or any beauty or persuasiveness of style to which I make no pretensions. Now, this is one of those things where he actually had an amazing writing style. He was able to do all of that, but he felt that for this particular issue, for this particular thing, that he was going to need to be basic. That he was going to need to leave aside some of the, some of the flowery prose and stuff like that. Because he didn't want to get anybody mixed up in the weeds. It was one of the things, I wasn't sure if I was even going to be doing the same introduction and the wild zaniness and stuff on the show. I thought about making these videos in a way that were more serious. I decided against that, because it still is primarily for this audience here. But I know the consequence of that. There may be people who say, who's this guy? He's a wild man. He's a wild man. He's acting crazy and stuff. And not granting in charity the idea that, look, I do a YouTube show. There's a shtick to this. We're having fun. But that wasn't the game. St. Irenaeus was not going to play that game. John of Damascus, though known for his eloquence, makes a similar appeal in his first treatise against the iconoclasts. Quote, receive my discourse with kindness, paying no attention to my little worth, nor expecting eloquence in my words, but rather considering the power of my arguments. It's one of those things, too. It's one of those things where it's a lesson learned a little bit for me. As I'm going through this, I was looking back and just thinking. I was thinking about, like, what are some of the things that I've done in the past that had apologetic import, right? What were they? And I said, take, for example, this stuff about sedevacantism, just as an example. So I read about sedevacantism, and I have a particular style. Anyone who knows my work knows this. But one of the complaints that I had was that there were people who claimed that they did not understand it. Now, some of them, I believe, are duplicitous scumbags. I'm like, no, you do. You do. You don't want to address it. You don't want to deal with it because you're so used to your idea of one argument without ever recognizing that system that you're trying to conceal. It's a perfect example, in fact, of what St. Irenaeus is calling about sheep that are cloaking themselves, right? Enfolding themselves inside of sheep's clothing. And it's why we have to get to the underbelly. And I use that imagery of the underbelly, the underworld, that network of assumptions that get obscured because we see, oh, it's a Latin Mass, or oh, this is the way that it was done before changes. So we don't even consider that. But that leads us on the rope-a-dope, the merry-go-round, spinning round and round till we're dizzy, ready to puke. And not realizing that if we play that game, there's no end to the objections. And on what basis have we said, well, I answered 1,000? There's billions of people on the planet. Have you talked to all of them? The idea that we then cut off the line and say, no, it's over. It's over. I don't need to answer anymore. It only takes one drop in their system, right? There's one drop, one heresy, one act of apostasy, and then we're in that place. But it's constantly the monocle man having to look and make sure each and everything works out, or else, and we'd have to do it, or else everything's on the line. A big house of cards comes tumbling down. It's kind of hard to keep that house of cards stable and put together, especially when it's on sinking sand in our own minds. That at any minute, the negative charism might not work. In any minute now. We got to find out. I'm glad for websites that keep me up to date every day. Really glad for them. What would we do without them? It's got their stamp of guarantee on it. You know it's dope because they're like, I've guaranteed, and you're like, dang, son. You're like a YouTube channel with about 15,000 subscribers. Give me a break. But he tried to remain truthful, simple, even homely. He wasn't going to be all over the place with his rhetoric. And thus not a retreat from reasoned argumentation, but from vain flourishing. That's tough for a guy who does poetry like I do, right? It's hard. It's hard, but it's one of the things I'm trying to do even in this series here. Trying to tone it down just a tad, not too much, just a tad. But that way we would be able to keep people focused on, say, look, there's something deep here about this. We need to address this. This is not a joke, okay? I genuinely want this discussion. I want to happen within Catholicism what happened over with Separated Brethren when Van Til popped up. And I'm not Van Til. Look, for good reasons. He's a separated brother. He's definitely not. I don't want anything to do with the heresies that he was embracing. Even within his methodology, there's numerous problems. It's based on sola scriptura. I mean, give me a break. That's nonsense. Yeah, that's complete cuckoo nonsense. So don't want that. But the idea of what sparked that conversation, and it was fit for the 20th century. In fact, it was fit and couched within a world that was trying to address modernism and the effects that modernism had on the Christian church. It's overdue. It's overdue on our side of the aisle. Especially when you have precedent in saints, doctors of the church even. Let's see. It, quote, was necessary clearly to prove that as in the very opinion and regulations exhibited by them, end quote, they are in self-refuting error. So what did he say? Where's the error? Is it an individual claim? Yeah, it's opinions and regulations exhibited by them. Refutation then, and not persuasion, is his primary guiding principle. That is actually bigger than people can maybe even imagine. That refutation was the driving motivation when dealing with the error, which, by the way, wiped him out. Wiped out this error. And he lamented the fact that so many otherwise bright minds, brilliant hearts, truly pious and devout Catholic people, that those individuals, though they had tried, it had not done enough to eradicate this wicked system. And his criticism was that they didn't go after the regulum. They didn't go after the regula. They didn't go after the idea of the system as a whole. And instead, and didn't go after simply destroying it and laying their foundations bare, laying the fortress, completely obliterating it, nuking the daylights out of it. Just smashing it to pieces, complete smithereens, leaving those little soldier men of arguments running around scampering with nowhere to go, nowhere to hide. Their fortress and headquarters has been denied them. And why? Because it was destroyed. Refutation, not persuasion, is the primary guiding principle. Have you been frustrated? Have you been? Have you been flustered? Saying, I just don't know. I give them these arguments and they're just not convinced. They're interpreting it within an epistemological framework that is a dividing line. It's a threshing floor for what they accept as evidence and do not accept as evidence. Because from your most basic and ruling assumptions flows your methodology. It flows the means by which you accomplish these things to reach your conclusion. There's a harmony between them. Otherwise, you'd be schizophrenic. Yeah, I presuppose naturalism, but I use the Bible only from a supernatural perspective as my means. And then I get to the end and I conclude supernaturalism, or whatever. You'd have this completely mixed up thing. You go, no, your conclusion is going to be in harmony, in fact, with your assumptions. And if not the last time around, it's only because you were proven wrong. But the next time around, it would, inevitably. And to the extent that you say it doesn't, you're playing chess against yourself, which is a joke. Because you know the moves. because you know the moves. Oh, I put myself in a real tight position. I don't know how I'm going to get out of it. Well, then you intended to be that on the one side, knowing that the other side didn't know how to get out of it. I mean, you're at a place where playing chess against yourself ends up looking and sounding really dumb. And it's not just refuting errors. These would be self-refuting error. Because remember, it's in the context of exposing and revealing that which is self-concealing. He wants the faithful to, quote, look with contempt upon these doctrines. It's apparently not enough to disagree neutrally, but with mercy for those beset by this ignorance, to hate that ignorance by which they are beset. Hating their error, Irenaeus is yet clear about the need the faithful have to pity those in error. Quote, pity those who still, cleaving to these miserable and baseless fables, have reached such a pitch of arrogance as to reckon themselves superior to all others on account of such knowledge, or as it should be called, ignorance. That's true of the world we're in right now. That's true of every encounter, apologetic encounter. That person is coming from a position, if they're going to debate you, and if they believe that you're outside of the fold, if they believe that, if they say you are not, in fact, the pillar and foundation of truth, there is no need for you. Your Virgin Mary had a bunch of other kids. If they say those kinds of things, they're coming at this place, in fact, with this notion of superior knowledge. We need to at least recognize that. And we need to always keep in mind those core commitments that we have, particularly that we believe that all these truths, right, all of these and all the other truths and that the Catholic Church teaches, that we believe those things to be true. Go back to your act of faith. Go back to the creed. Go back and ask yourself, am I fully cognizant of that? Moving forward with confidence. In fact, even with optimism, to recognize that because it's true, in spite of me or you, whatever we conclude, it's true, that we can march forward in that encounter and present it as such. We do not have to present it as a possibility. One option among many. We just want them to think, well, it's at least possible. They already include it in a secular age as an option. It's just not a preferred one. And there we are again, even for the people of the preferred path, we're back there again too. It depends on your worldview. Quote, they have now been fully exposed, and simply to exhibit their sentiment is to obtain a victory over them. This method of exposure unto destruction. And think about it, you obtained a victory over them. Why? To exhibit their sentiments. What does that mean? Self-destructive. Again, this is laying the foundation, saying, look, what they are saying is self-contradictory. What they are saying is going to be, in the end, the reason for their demise. Self-conceit. Self-deceit. Self-concealing. Self-obscuring. Wicked bad error. The madness and blasphemy of unbelieving worldviews. The sinfulness of exchanging the truth for a lie. Worshiping and laying prostrate before the natural order and the creature over the God that created them. That will be their demise. Not a super dope argument on your part, the folly of their own. He says this method of exposure unto destruction is then given one of Irenaeus' fullest treatments in the last paragraph at the end of Book 1. Though it's a long quote, it is vital for understanding his conception of apologetic methodology. I'm going to read it. And this will be the end, because, not much longer. Wherefore I have labored to bring forward and make clearly manifest the utterly ill-conditioned carcass of this miserable little fox. For there will not now be need of many words to overturn their system of doctrine, when it has been made manifest to all. It is as when, on a beast hiding itself in a wood, and by rushing forth from it, is in the habit of destroying multitudes, one who beats around the woods and thoroughly explores it, so as to compel the animal to break cover, does not strive to capture it, seeing that it is truly a ferocious beast. but those present can then watch and avoid its assaults and can cast darts at it from all sides. So he's saying it's like a beast that's hiding in the woods. It's hiding in the shadows. It's lurking about. And when it does come out, it's ravaging everything around it. And so the hunter goes in to try to find it and discovers this thing and draws it out. Draws it out. And the people around it recognize just how ferocious this thing really is. And when they're present, they can watch and avoid its assaults. And they can cast darts at it from all sides and wound it and finally slay the destructive brute. Think about secularism. Think about atheism. Think about all the different kinds, the scientism. Think about all of it. Think about how this approach to conceptualize it, rather than the swashbuckling metaphor, back and forth and back and forth. Cling, clang, clang, cling, 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 cling. I get that for ironing, sharpening iron, but not for destroying a rival system that dares to exalt itself against the glory of God. No way. No way, Jose. And they can finally slay that destructive brute. So in our case, since we have brought their hidden mysteries, which they kept in silence among themselves, to the light, it will not now be necessary to use many words in destroying their system of opinions. You bring it out. You reveal it. Like I said, if you lay down that fortress, if you completely lay siege on the headquarters and you destroy it, you nuke the place, all of a sudden, and what is the fortress? It's their network of assumptions regarding how they can know anything at all. How they can determine one way or another whether anything is good, whether life has meaning, whether uniformity of nature is real, whether logic is possible. Not just that they do these things, but does their system account for those things? Or are they doing, as we've said before, the idea of saying they're smacking God in the face only because God put him up on his lap? They're using the tools that God created and using those as if they don't need to recognize the God that created those and then say that, by the way, those tools are reflected in him, to then say, I'm going to use those against the creator of them, to say that that creator of them never existed. As a consequence, they believe that those things either have no real purpose at all or it's all kind of in the brain. We're living in the Matrix, guys. You bring it to the light, it won't be necessary to use many words anymore in destroying their system of opinions. He says, I shall furnish means for overthrowing them by meeting all their opinion in order in which they have been described, that I may not only expose the wild beast to view, but may inflict wounds upon it from every side. In the above, Irenaeus not only admits to the extensive nature of even the setting up portion of the apologetic task, but he also determines to thoroughly meet all their opinions so as to wound their false system of doctrine from every side. Nothing short of total destruction, then, is the methodological aim of his apologetic task. Nothing can be left for the false doctrine to stand on. Nothing. Nothing. Because it's not just, I can get around that. It is daring to exalt itself against the glory of God. It is daring to exalt itself against the King of Kings that has all power and authority right now and is subjecting all things to his footstool. So the idea that, that explains, I get that, yeah. I get the idea. Maybe it's a self-existent multiverse. I mean, maybe there's no God, that really is involved in any of that stuff. Yeah, I get it. That's at least I can understand that. No, I can't. No, I can't. Because it's folly. It's folly. Yeah. It's one of those things where it's like, why do we hit ourselves in the knees, right? What's the skater's name? I know I've said it before. I'm looking it up real quick here. Let's see. Yeah, we're pulling a Nancy Kerrigan, right? We're smashing these. No. Yeah. Oh yeah, no. I'm so sorry. It was Tanya Harding that did it. Harding officially pleads guilty. Yeah. We're pulling a Tanya Harding. Going up to ourselves with a baseball bat at Louisville Slugger and saying, I know that the Lord revealed this. I know that the Lord has told us about the nature of unbelief, the nature of the sinner's error, the nature of apologetic systems, counter-apologetic systems. I understand that the church is the pillar and foundation of truth. I know that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. I know that all of those things are found in Christ our Lord. I know that, but you know what? I can't just bring that up. You are Tanya hardening the daylight out of your own kneecaps, and you ain't doing it anymore. Because then you're leaving everybody not only limping around wondering, why in the world did we do that? But their apologetic method is super weak at that point. Is there any compelling anything? Have you revealed a beast in a system? Are you playing footsies with that little bugger? Are you misleading them? Oh yeah, your understanding can be totally opposite of the Lord. You can have no recourse at all to that and have no, it doesn't find its place in God at all. And it's really an irrelevant question. Give me a break. It's why so many people right now trust in the chariots and horsemen of their own minds. The strength of their own mega dope arguments. Did you hear that one? It was really good. I felt like it kind of moved the dial. And if you kind of, connected with this one over here and you kind of move them together, it doesn't really get you where you want, but it's kind of in that direction, I think. Did God leave us with that? Or is he sitting on the throne right now? What is it? It matters. It matters. According to his analogy with the wounding of the destructive and wild beast, it's from all sides that the darts are to be thrown, and not only by him. Apologetics, as conceived by Irenaeus, is thus a universally relevant task, one he is traditioning to the church, even if many are not able to personally cast darts. Quote, for it is now in your power, and in your power of all your associates, to familiarize yourselves with what has been said, to overthrow their wicked and undigested doctrines, and to set forth doctrines agreeable to the truth. That, of course, is going to lead into the idea that once you have crushed that system, then you move forward with a positive presentation. Then you move forward. Until then, destroy the system. Man. I don't know why that window's open. It's coming in like crazy. I've got all this light on my face. Ah! I miss doing night shows. I'm probably going to just have to do it because I'm sick and tired of fighting the light of the window here. Oh, no, we're going to have to tone it down. Here we go. I wish I would have known. But now I got shadow cast all over my face. There we go. There we go. That's better. Kind of. I'm going to make it really dark. Hi, guys. All right, let's go real quick. We're going to go real quick here into the chat. Not for long. And I'm going to try to stick mainly with stuff that's been has a tag, okay? I told you. I said you got to take it. Oh, and real quick, make sure to go check out the David L. Gray show. I was on there this week. It was awesome to be with him. It was the Wednesday morning show. You can see me there with my fancy monocle. It's a very fancy program, and he's a really great guy. It was a great conversation. Make sure to go, and if you do, make sure to comment, right? Comment, like, subscribe, all that stuff, and let him know. Let him know in the comments that you were there. I put a little wolf in there. He knows what that means. He knows what it means. So, okay. Now, let's see here. Let's see, I don't think it's a coincidence that many who don't agree with the church's teaching on sexual morality struggle with sexual morality. Yeah. Yeah, because your actions will follow. You know, if your presuppositions are completely detached from the Lord, if that's what you're doing, you know, then unsurprising, ta-da, all of a sudden, it's like, well, look at that. It's kind of weird, isn't it? It's kind of weird because now that you don't give praise and glory and thanksgiving to God and recognize his power and attributes and his divinity, that all of a sudden you're kind of doing the entire list of sins that, you know, St. Paul lists in Romans 1. Let's see. Yeah, Candelario says, man is a religious animal. Religion is giving God his due. Yes, because he's creator. Totally. Totally. Jedediah says, changing your life, that thing you most and least want to do. And in reality, the unbeliever in that regard does not want to change their life as much as they want to do as they desire to do. They want their cake and to eat it too. Yeah. Let's see here. Let's see here. It just like jumped down real hard. It jumped down real hard. Okay, yeah. Yeah, Jedediah says presuppositionalism and classical methods are not opposed to each other. Well, yeah, not in and of themselves, but the presuppositions underlying the classical method on how we know things. That was one of the moments that I think rankled Trent Horn the most in his debate with Jay Dyer. And that's not to say Jay Dyer, it's its own thing. But you sit there and you go, when talking about foundationalism, when talking about that part about foundationalism, people should watch that and say there is a difference between these things. Foundationalism is a terribly weak foundation, by the way. Yeah. Let's see here. Let's see. There's a way to use classical methods in a presuppositional manner. Yeah, but interestingly enough, you would not be using those first, because you would be going after going after their most ruling and basic assumptions. Otherwise, you're just still spinning the wheels. You're saying, yeah, technically every single person who uses the classical method is in fact using presupposition. You can't get around that. You have a presuppositional network. That is unquestionable. Unquestionable. So you have a presuppositional network, but if you're going against somebody who's operating off of a completely different ultimate authority, then the means, right, by which they evaluate things and recognize it as evident or admit it as fact, those are different. You have to go after that interpretive scheme. And it's not just epistemological, it's also ethical. Let's see. Meaning of Catholic, how does the Trinity solve the problem for the one and the many? We're going to be talking about that later, but the basic summation is that if it's, first of all, in the idea that you're destroying the opposite side will do the same thing. If you come from a world that's infinite, you have various difficulties that come with that. So you would, in classical theists will oftentimes deal with that just as well. Same thing with the idea that we came from nothing, right? So you can reductio the daylights out of both of those systems. And then you say, well, technically there is a last man standing. But it's the idea that in order for us to do anything at all, including knowledge, communication, being, induction, deduction, anything we're doing in life, so much of this comes back down to the primacy of the being of God in our apologetic method, and that being is Trinitarian. So we're not just simply arguing the way that we understand God, right? The way that the creation happened. Okay, the way the creation happened, the involvement of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, and you say that is reflected, in fact. That's reflected in the created order, in our ability to distinguish between one and many, to be able to recognize the ness of things, redness, softness, okay? Those kinds of things where we can say there's similarity, chairness. The idea that I can look at one chair and another chair, and even though they're not the same chair, to recognize that. That's actually a conundrum for worldviews, because worldviews either fall in one direction of this atomism where they can't account for the unity in a world that's rapidly diverse and random, chaotic, in fact, nothing holding it together from the outside. So they're left on that side of things. On the other side of things are the ones who bring it all together as a single whole, that everything is one, there's this ultimate oneness. They have a difficult time explaining the reality, in fact, of diversity. And that both of those things, the one and the many, that's a difficult problem for everyone. But no worldview, the only worldview that has it to where to frame it in our Trinitarian language, the three do not annihilate the unity, right? And the unity does not absorb the way that we can know the differences between the Father and the Son and the Holy Ghost. And we'll explain that in much better language in upcoming episodes when talking about the Trinity. And also that the Trinity, the reason why is one of the powerful things about it, so that the unity does not absorb the diversity in our field, right, as we understand things, right, insofar as the created order reflects the Trinity. And so the idea is that the unity does not absorb the diversity, the differences, and that the differences don't annihilate the unity, and that there's a mysterious balance between them. And those things are accounted for in our Trinity. And what's interesting about it is the Trinity was divinely revealed, and it wasn't like, well, how do we account for the philosophical dilemma of the one and the many? And yet it's a fundamental part of our belief system. It's central. In fact, it's so central because it ends up dealing with everything, which is why even when someone wants to argue just for the divine simplicity and say, this is God, the person can ask them, is that a person? The moment you begin getting into that conversation of whether or not it's, are we dealing with a person? What's personhood in that regard? Is the moment that, is there a generic personhood? How do we understand personhood? How does our system understand that, understand their role in the created order, and understand how that's reflected, making things possible as we too are in the likeness and image of God? And that is operative within us and around us. And again, we'll do an entire episode talking about it. I'll go through the book so that way we have an outline for how that would make sense. We'll say it in a way that's not so rambly. I apologize. Mea culpa. Let's see here. People say, agreed, the 5 ways tend to go over the heads of people whose brains are addicted to porn and such. But it's not even, it's not even just that. It goes over the heads of a lot of people. And it goes over, completely flies over the enemy. Because the enemy is actually the underlying presuppositions. It's the network wherein the opponent's views come out. And we're just trying to say, just accept evidences that we assume to be evidences from our presuppositional network. And they're like, well, I actually go by a different one. And if you want to see how that plays out, reflect on the difficulties and frustrations that a lot of people who believe intelligent design, creationism, that they talk about. Strike up a conversation. Strike up a conversation sometime with them about their criticisms of why their studies are not in academic literature, why they're not in scientific journals. You'll hear exactly what I'm talking about. Same thing with the idea when you talk to somebody who doesn't accept miracles in a debate, and you're trying to advance the idea of miracles, and you're like, yeah, well, you're presupposing this kind of materialism. You're presupposing this. You're assuming it. That's your worldview. Yes, go after the worldview. And that exchange there is evidence of something, that someone is wanting to go without addressing the worldview, but then bumps up immediately with it. And even if it's not, it's been operative the whole time, and it's bound to bang. No. Let's see here. Yeah, somebody said a boy named Sue starts playing in the background. Yeah, a boy named Sue. Yeah. And it was Johnny Sue. Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay, that makes sense now. There it is. We found him. We found him. Yeah, computational theist. Do you know any other Catholic with a degree in philosophy who practices presuppositional apologetics? I'd love to read a paper or two from this crowd. That is actually a false system. It's a false expectation. For one, methodology, find me a bunch that have even dedicated time and effort to issues about methodology from tradition. It's a conversation that has not really happened. That's what we talked about in our last episode, in fact. And truth is, you're not going to get a whole bunch of them. That's why I'm doing a groundbreaking thing, in fact. And so, we sit there and we think like, what do we expect from this? And say, well, you can have individuals if they are philosophy majors. Why invoke that if classical theism, right, doesn't need to? I mean, look at Trent Horn's article in Catholic Answers magazine. He's citing William Lane Craig about the real howler of presuppositionalism. He's citing William Lane Craig. And so what we're doing is we're basing it off of people like St. Francis de Sales. We're basing it off of St. Irenaeus. We're talking about it in light of things that were said, we will be, about Ronald Knox. While not being a presuppositionalist, that he was living in a time where that was happening, beginning to happen, that conversation about methodology that broke out over in the land of our separated brethren. And even in general, right? Questions about worldviews, questions about underlying assumptions. What are the ruling and operative principles of our system? Yeah. Yeah, and to begin with a priori arguments, right? Mango Bango, St. Francis was presuppositional. He was in his entire Catholic controversy, defense of the faith. He used the method that we would invoke. He wasn't swashbuckling, right? No, well, the real interpretation, he destroyed their position. He said, if you believe in extraordinary mission, then this would be the problem that you'd face. You would end up having anybody. How could you make it so that anybody had to be ordained, that there was any kind of formal idea of what ordination was, or the idea, do you even need to be? And who can take it away? Who can grant that? And so he shows the anarchistic dynamic of it, the self-defeating nature of it. And he does it by attacking the most ruling assumption that they have. Same thing with the perspicuity of Scripture. Same thing with the canon. So rather than debating, he says, look, you don't even have a mechanism, number one, to establish a canon. Who among you? And if you say, well, we reasoned it through. Well, you can say, so it's just you guys are really smart guys or what? Who were they, by the way, that did that? Who were they? Say their names. Give credit where it's due, home slice. And more than that, what if somebody says, I don't believe it should be in there? They'll fall back on, well, it's self-attesting and it's like a connection that I have. And I say, what if I don't have a connection with that? Let's say the book of Romans, I'm just not feeling it. On what basis are they able to preserve themselves? On what basis would they be able, by what authority, over and over and over again? Almost 72,000 people converted. Yeah. It's one of great missionary miracles of Catholic history. And what was the method that he used? The one you're hearing about right now. Let's see. Mango said it's been on his heart for a while to write a book on Catholic presuppositionalism. If that's true, then you may end up being the author that Ronald Knox prophesies about. I'm nervous to be that guy, right? If you're better suited, man, believe me, brother. Believe me, it'd be great. Because Enslaved says, I'm interested to learn how de Sales uses presuppositional argument on people who are already believers to convert them. Because those believers do not operate off of the same presuppositions. You could say the Gnostics were. They were believers. I mean, their beliefs were way different, but they were believers. And you say their most basic and ruling principles on authority. They don't presuppose the magisterium. They do not presuppose the church. They do not presuppose the bosom of the church wherein we interpret and understand. They don't presuppose it. They presuppose an individualism, an autonomous reason, and a church that is completely arbitrary. It's a hokey-pokey kind of utilitarian nonsense. There's other people who agree with me, so we started a club. Sinking sand, dude. Sinking sand. And from those, and where the strength of DeSales, and I don't want to jump ahead too far because we're going to go through the book. I'll show you case by case by case by case how he does it. Where he goes and he says, you assume, so they have beliefs, right? They believe in pastors. So do we. Wow, we have the same beliefs. No, we have holy orders. We presuppose that authority can only beget authority. So authority, you can't just assume it for yourself. That would be extraordinary, right? They believe in an extraordinary kind, but it's got a cloak, as Irenaeus would say. It's got it's shrouded and concealed. And it's concealed by the idea that those individuals were ordained by a group. So let's say Presbyterian or Lutheran or whatever, right? That there's this idea that, well, yeah, they went to these people who ordained them. You say, well, who gave them authority? Well, they're really smart. they totally went against the Catholic Church. God called them to that. Well, then what do you do with the guy down here who says God called him to that? What do you do with the self-assumed pastor? Because ultimately, your excuse, say, I don't believe in that. I believe in pastors. You can hearken back and kick the can down the road. But with us, that's why we have that chain that goes all the way back to the beginning. And that's one of the many reasons why that is extraordinarily important and significant, especially in the apologetic that St. Francis de Sales used. Yeah, and yes, the sedes, Radtrads and sedes do their form of swashbuckling with outside sources outside the magisterium. They just simply add to their canon, but they still base it on a kind of perspicuity. They have a kind of sola that they base it off of, and an individualistic idea, which is why you end up having just chaos over there. It might possibly be one of the least organized and united groups and systems of any belief system in Christianity that I've ever watched, ever seen. Let's see. Jeremiah reminds me of El Rushbo's Thumos, and I love it. Yeah, I appreciate it. I'll tell you, Rushbo was a big influence on me. When I was a kid, my dad was a DJ, and I would be involved in, I'd go to my dad's work and early in the morning and stuff. And I remember I was real little, and there was a sign, a poster on the wall, and it was dark. It was really early. I'm down. I'm laying on the floor because I'm so exhausted. And I look up, and I saw a poster that somebody just put there. Right? It wasn't there the last time I'd been there. And I looked up, and it was this awesome, kind of cool-looking dude with a big cigar in his mouth and a really cool signature that was kind of glowing. It said EIB. And I said, I want to be like my dad when I grow up, and this guy too. So he had a big influence on me, but I also had many criticisms. And no, Mango, I am not a accredited philosopher. I'm not somebody who went to school for that. Let's see. And again, that's kind of a curious ordeal with that. Most Catholic philosophers aren't even, most people doing Catholic apologetics at this point are not. In fact, there's no, it's kind of that's like maybe your personal preference of things, but it doesn't really bother me at all. I follow on the shoulders of giants, man. That's why I base it off of books. And it's also why I have no fear of not pussyfooting around with a bunch of people playing footsies with people who are blaspheming our Lord. I think there's some serious problems right now with individuals following. It's one thing to say, well, you studied philosophy. Well, that's great. If your philosophy ends up at a place that is just demonstrably riddled with problems, like from the get-go, show me my problems. Show me where the issues are and what I'm talking about. Show me what they are. Yeah, because I can show you many problems, in fact, with issues that philosophers have, and there's not a monolithic understanding of those cats either. There's like all different people in all different groups within philosophy, different schools of thought. In fact, it's like kind of its own little merry-go-round. It's one of the reasons I think it's experienced a demise to the point where It's a little bit, to be quite frank, for the most part in academia, it's struggling to stay above water, even in light of its absolute necessity, which is how weak it is. You say, this is how weak it is, that it's absolutely essential, right? It's absolutely essential. We do it. That's how we think things through. That's how we formulate ideas regarding logic and what are we and how do we distinguish between this and that and make various distinctions, whether something is valid. It's important. It precedes, like the philosophy of science precedes science, right? And yet scientism right now is beating the ever-living daylights out of it. And you say, why? Why? Well, go and talk to a bunch of these philosophy dudes. Find out. You'll get inundated by a lot of that intellectual solipsism nonsense. The autonomous reason of man looking at a world devoid of God, you get a lot of that. Whole bunches and bunches. But as I said, rather than, if you think that I'm wrong about a specific thing that I've said thus far, please let me know. Please let me know if presuppositions do not, in fact, precede your ideas of knowledge or do not inform your understanding of evidences. If you think that's the case, let me know. Let me know, because I'm going to be making a lot of videos about this stuff. Let's see. Yeah, the idea that reality is in your mind. Right? The idea that reality, the extreme form, when you sit there and you're like, dude, you guys are all just an illusion, man. It's all in my head right now. It's this crazy, hold on a second. Close. Window capture. Here, give me a second. Man, this light really drove me nuts right here. I'm sorry. I'm a particular about it. I'm like, dude, this is terrible. This is terrible. Yeah. Anyway, the idea that, this reality is in your head, right? That it's in your brain. It's the Matrix, your brain in a vat. Brain in a vat. And so, if you detach yourself from God, or you make it all about you, autonomous reason, it's all about you, your ideas of ethics, your ideas about what we know, and you're extrapolating that, you're saying, you can only know stuff by experience, and say, well, have you experienced all things? Well, no. So does everybody only know by experience, or are you just really speaking for yourself? Can you speak for other people? Are there other people? You can just get it back, drive it back, and back. And with Protestantism, where the conversation came up, the idea of a hermeneutic, of a solipsistic hermeneutic, that says, yes, it's in their brain. It's between them, the Holy Ghost, and the Bible, and what they make of it. It's Mr. Potato Head. Mango said, wait, who prophesied the Catholic would write a book on presuppositionalism? This live stream has been blowing my mind thus far. Yeah. So the idea, yes, Ronald Knox did. Ronald Knox, in his book, or in his 4 chapters on proving God, spends an enormous amount of time talking about an author who he believes will come. And he calls him the author, or my author. He calls him those things. And he describes the world that they will face and the onslaught that they're going to get from the Catholic apologetic world. Yeah. And he was saying things really critical of the entire mechanism, the entire apparatus at that point. Andrea says, I like Jeremiah 2 despite some minor differences. I love you too, buddy. But those differences are also differences you have with Mr. Flanders. Yeah, I appreciate. Yeah, it's probably MOC, probably the best apologetics podcast on the net with Taylor Marshall. I'm so sorry. Hold on. I thought I read Taylor Marshall. Oh, I did read Taylor Marshall. Yeah, I did. You really did that. How dare you? How dare you? The other channels, Flanders and Jeremiah, are definitely more worth your time and won't lead you continually into schism. Dude, I'll leave it to you guys. You guys are good. The face of Bo, did you just make a Whovian joke? All right, we are out of here. We got to get going. I've been on way too long. Way too long. No. Okay, so make sure, again, if you would like to attend the meeting this evening, I'm going to be speaking about secular age it's through the lens of how not to be secular, and that is a book by James K.A. Smith, and that's going to be this evening. If you want more information about that, you're in or around Grand Rapids, or you'd like to make the hike, you're more than welcome to do so. It'd be flattering. We could drink a beer, hang out, talk, whatever. It'd be a lot of fun. You just go ahead and email me right there, PaleocratDiaries@gmail.com. Okay, same exact thing if you want more information, if you're in the area and you want to check out the Newsies, the Broadway musical done by Sacred Heart, or would like to learn more about Sacred Heart and find out how you can have a school that epic in your own diocese and what you can do to put it together and the great minds that work together to make that thing a reality, not just for them in Grand Rapids, but all over the place. Okay, make sure to check out, of course, all the other shows, Reason and Theology, as well as over at Meaning of Catholic. Check out Jake Fowler, especially. He's my man. We're going to be doing stuff together. And check out David L. Gray. You got to do it. David L. Gray. Check out the episode I did a couple days ago. Check out the Terror of Demons morning show that we did on Monday. Bunch of fun. Been busy. Your boy has been busy. And if you'd like to support the channel, make sure two things. Make sure to go either to thesaintmaker.com/PaleocratDiaries with the 10% off coupon code of PaleocratDiaries. All that is in the link below, or in the description below, as well, of course, as the Patreon. If you'd like to support us on Patreon, and if you're a patron right now, please connect with me on Telegram. Don't make me keep doing this 2 place, 3 place, 4 place, 5 thing. If you have questions, criticisms, comments, not only can you email me, PaleocratDiaries@gmail.com, but you can find me on Telegram, where I'm about to go for the after show Q&A extravaganza. Lots of words. Until next time, never give up, keep on smiling, and memento mori.
I want to make people dream bigger thoughts.